Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Jack's Coffee Break. We are here today with the Americas pack, which for me released yesterday, which is when I started building all of this. So I want to talk about this pack because I have been looking forward to something like this for well over 2 years now. Ever since I tried to build a Mexico section in Highwater Pass, for those of you who remember that project, um, it dawned on me real fast that we just did not have the build pieces in order to make that happen properly. Um, Now since then I've grown as a builder, and I think that I could get a lot of it done with the parts that we already had, but the Americas pack definitely makes it a lot easier. But really, for me, I think the highlight of this is going to be the animals. And we will talk about why as we get more towards the end of the video. But for now, let's go ahead and look at what all we're going to get in this pack. So you'll see that I've set up this really tossed together zoo here. My goal in doing this was originally to build like a themed zoo, and then I got about 6 hours into the project and realized, no, that's not happening. So instead, I'm going to show off the different flavors and varieties of habitat you might come across and how the animals fit into them. So over here we've got our city plaza staff center, I guess. It's ugly looking and it's made out of brick. I'm using it for a test demo for another project. Yeah, let's go ahead and with this theme in mind, let's look at this habitat over here. So this is going to be for our bush dogs. So these are going to be a South America critter. I don't believe they come up into North America really at all. We're just gonna be bad guests and pass through the habitat. But as you can see, they are so small. They are, I mean, just, how do I even begin? Real quick, since I found him, let's go ahead and take a look at this baby real quick. Come here. They're itty bitty bitty. There we go. So this is Eola. She's a little ratty. Hasn't really developed the fur around the eyes and the snoot yet, but oh, they're precious, and they're so small. I think that this is one of the smallest animals we have in the game. Even when they grow up and become adults, they're not much bigger. We'll look at one of the adults in a minute. But yeah, so here's our baby bush dog. Oh goodness, and they are, I mean, they're just precious. Oh, I should turn on the volume so you guys can hear the noises. Yeah. I'll see whether or not we can get any. Yeah, they're really cute. I just really wanted to highlight these guys because they're precious. Let's go ahead and look at one of the adults real quick. So, like I said, they don't get much bigger. Right. Yeah, we can... There we go. Yeah, the adults are not much bigger. Like, they are compared to the babies, but they're... I mean, what is that? Less than a foot tall? Now, I had heard of bush dogs before, and I think I've seen them in encyclopedias, but I've never actually, like, seen them in person. Really don't have any kind of information or interaction with them. And so this has been kind of an enjoyable discovery for me of like, oh yeah, this animal does in fact exist. I would love to see these in person, but I don't know what zoo even has them, much less where to go and, you know, which state I need to be in. So they are absolutely adorable. Now, as for some of the mechanics of these guys themselves, if we look at their Zoopedia, now I will remind you that my particular version of Planet Zoo is slightly modded. And so I'm hoping that because I haven't updated my mods, and the mods are not updated yet as far as I know, that I'll be able to give you relatively accurate information, but just know that my numbers may not reflect your numbers depending on whether or not you have certain mods installed or if you're playing a clean base game. However, we can see their range right here. So they are mostly in South America, a little bit up into Southern Central America, just right here. Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Costa Rica, Guyana, Suriname, all the way down to Paraguay. We see that one individual needs a landmass of 500 meters squared, and then after that, you add another 50 meters per adult individual. and you add another 25 meters for each juvenile. And you're also going to need water space, so it starts at 75 square meters. For juveniles, you'll need another, what is that, 12? For adults, you go from 75 to 100, so that'll be 25. So yes, you will need some amount of water requirement, and even though not specifically listed, these guys can deep dive, which is big news for the modding community, but also big news for us. This is our first, I think, first deep diving, like, dog-like creature. I'm not entirely sure that they are part of the Canis genus. I can actually check that real quick. They are not. So they are Spethios veneticus. Like, I've seen that collection of letters. I know how to pronounce this. Spethios veneticus. I did Google it, and they are, in fact, related to dogs. They just have a different genus. But they are under the family Canidae, which I find fascinating. Apparently their closest living relative may be either the maned wolf or the African wild dog. So that gives you kind of an idea of where they sit on the tree. So they like to have grassland, tropical, and aquatic in their habitats. So you're going to get some variation depending on how you build and how you theme out. But you are going to be working with that kind of limited roster of plants, especially since we can't bring in any North America. It'll be South America only. So this is kind of what I decided to do with them, was this sort of overgrown business park sort of thing. Oh yeah, and they sploot. They sploot, which as far as I know is a unique animation to them. I need a corgi mod with these guys, is what I'm saying. They are so good. They're so good. These guys, I think, are going to work really well. Not necessarily as corner animals, they don't really do that, but if you have like an exotic corridor, if you're working with like a South America portion of your zoo, these guys would be perfect to fit in. Goodness knows we have precious few South America animals, and these guys are one of the most unique, I think. They don't take a whole lot to contain, only 1.25 meters and a grade 2, which, I mean, most of us are building with the construction kit anyway, so it's not going to matter. But it is nice to know that you can use fairly low barriers and not have to worry too much about them. So let's move on to our other canid. Coyotes! Yes, we have coyotes, and I think I have somehow... Yes, I've somehow managed to accidentally breed an albino. Alright, whatever. So, if you wanted to see the albino coyote, here you go. They look excellent. The texture on the fur, like the quality of the fur detail, that bunching and scruffling and the kind of wavy, not quite matted look. The way that they hold their ears is very good. They've got that kind of gangliness to them. I mean, the models are spot on. If anything, I would say that maybe they've got a little bit of a smile. They're a little bit cute. A little bit. Let's go wander around with this sort of regular looking one. Can you get out of the bush, please? You are not a bush dog, sir. This is where they hide. It just, if you're like, hey, I hear there's coyotes in my town, but I've never seen them. It's because this is where they are. They're in this bush. Anyway, so, yeah, no, as far as the model goes, I will say that their faces are maybe a little bit cute, but they've still got that kind of wry, psychotic wildness to them that most coyotes just have. As far as my knowledge of, like, animals that I have seen in real life, this is pretty spot on. And they sound very much like a coyote as well. They do howl, so they do have that particular, like, unique feature. So if you're one of those people who doesn't like the howling, maybe coyotes are not for you. But that's going to be true for all of the dogs anyway. Now, they do require some amount of space. You know, they kind of have the standard canid thing going on, once again. So they live all over North America and into Central America, going all the way up into Alaska, apparently, which I didn't realize that they had migrated that far. I knew that they were through the whole lower 48, but I thought they kind of stopped at about, like, you know, right here, but, you know, just below the Great Lakes region. But no, apparently they go all the way up. Would not surprise me to find out that they are, in fact, in South America at some point. I believe their boundaries have been expanding quite significantly. So, they require quite a bit of land, 920 meters squared for one, and you are going to need a group of 2 to 12. They are considered social. Now, in real life, they're happy to be lone doggos, and they can group up in packs if they want to, but it's more of like a fission fusion thing, if I understand correctly. It's not really like an obligate, they have to be together, social order like, you know, wolves have. In the wild, their diet would consist mostly of whatever they can get their teeth on, but here we're going to be feeding them mostly just like, meat product. They do not get any interspecies enrichment, neither do the bush dogs, as I'm sure you can imagine from something based off of a dog model. Ridiculous creatures. But yeah, no, the coyotes are one that I have been desperately hoping for a while now. I'm not a huge fan of coyotes in real life, I have to admit. Like, I have an affection for them because they are a dog, but if I'm being completely honest, I have lost more than my fair share of pets to these guys. They are absolute menaces. They have no respect for human boundaries. In fact, if anything, they're adapting to be better city dwellers, so we're not going to get rid of them anytime soon. They're a little bit too clever for most traps to work. That's something that we're going to have to contend with. They love to be in the bushes. I don't know why. I'm sorry. I keep trying to get them when they're not. It's just not going to work. Yeah, they're adapting even better to live in cities. They are too clever to fall for several different kinds of traps, which is its own mess, I guess you could say. They're also interbreeding with regular dogs and local wolf populations. So coy wolves are probably the future, as are coy dogs, which unfortunately for the dog half of things kind of takes them back and reverts them towards that sort of wild behavior. So it is detrimental to pet populations across the board. there's not a lot of good that's happening there. On the other hand, I have to respect them. You know, the fact that they have that level of adaptability, the fact that they are making it work despite everything we are doing to make their lives miserable. I can't help but respect it. I'm sorry. I know that they're awful. But, I mean, at some point in time, you gotta recognize. So, definitely an iconic creature as well. I know a lot of people don't think of these as zoo animals, but, you know, you have to remember that the world exists of more than North America, and so to somebody living in, like, you know, China, Japan, maybe South America, Europe, these would be exotic animals to them, and so it has a reason to exist in zoos, even if we disagree, you know? So let's move on to our next animal. So we're gonna go look at the other animal that I've been really anticipating for a while. Oh, and we get the full goat stretch. Look at this. Look at this. Now, is she going to make it down without breaking her legs? Because I have tried to use this enrichment in the past, and my goat has broken her legs. Nope, she did just fine. It's really nice to see them actually using this enrichment. So we've got our male, we've got our females, and we've got our babies. So let's take a look at them. Here is our male, possibly the most iconic. They look exactly like I hoped they would. They look like a bighorn sheep. These guys are native to the Mojave, into the Rocky Mountains, definitely from, like, California, Nevada area, and I don't think their range stretches much farther than Texas, but we can check that real quick. Yeah, not really into Texas, just this whole range. It's very, like, broken up and sporadic. Part of this is due to human intervention, part of this is due to decreasing population numbers for a variety of reasons, hunting is one of them, and part of this is due to the Rocky Mountains being the way they are. That being said, their population is actually pretty healthy. They're doing alright, so they are adapted for a variety of climates. Taiga, grassland, and desert, which makes sense for this region of Earth. They don't really go in for, like, jungles and stuff like that. It's really not their thing. They like mountainous areas, but they will venture down into the plains. You need a group of 3 minimum. You can have them as sort of a mating herd, so one male, 9 females, or you can have bachelor groups of 3 to 10 of, one gender or the other. You cannot have your guests enter the habitat for obvious reasons. I didn't mention it for the canines because why would you? But yeah, no, guests can't enter for these guys. They reproduce fairly easily and fairly often, so you shouldn't be having any kind of troubles with them. They will eat mostly vegetation as you expect. Their enrichment is very similar to things like, the goat and the ibex. And they do have a lot of interspecies enrichment, so American bison, prairie dog, moose, pronghorn, antelope, and reindeer. So even if you don't have the North America pack, you will still get some enrichment out of these guys. So that is our male. Our females are, well, this one's taking a nappy poo. Here's one of our standing up ones. As you can see, very goat-like head, but they are a sheep. They do have their own horns for various reasons. They are stout. Yeah, they're exactly what you would expect. And then here is one of our babies. So we can follow him around for a little while. And again, we have that classic cuteness, but in this case, I think it actually works. Again, the modeling, the fur texture is, I think, some of Frontier's best work. It's honestly one of the cases where I kind of wish that they would go back and remaster some of their own old animals, maybe as like a free update or something like that, because I would love to see this level of technical ability applied to something like the West African lion, or maybe one of the tigers or something like that. Like, it's just, it's really, really good. They've done a great job with these. So, they will accept a variety of habitat styles. I have mine as this sort of half mountain, half desert sort of thing. My goats absolutely can and will climb all over this stuff, so if you're wanting to contain them, you might need to resort to more traditional flat walls, rather than... Are you gonna be okay? No, you decided against it? You're gonna break your legs if you do that? Okay, that's a wise choice. Find a better way. But yeah, you're probably going to need rocky barriers that are pretty high, pretty flat. Oh, she made it. Look at that. Good job. Yeah. Or you're gonna have to resort to more traditional walls for these guys, much like any of the other goats and sheep that we have in the game. Next up, we have the American flamingo, also known as the pink flamingo. I didn't know that I wanted these guys until they were announced, at which point I said, yes, I've been eating these for like years now. When I think of a flamingo, this is what I think of, not the African greater flamingo. I would have preferred we got this first, and then the African flamingo later. But as things stand, I'm very happy that they now exist in the game. As many of you probably know, they get their pink coloration from the brine shrimp that they eat, which is neat. But it does mean that you will find pink flamingos that, if they do not have this diet of brine shrimp, will eventually start to lose this color, and they will start to turn kind of white and pale. They have these insane beaks, specifically for this kind of fishing that they do. Now, I know these guys from living in Florida. They are native to Florida, parts of the coast from, it looks like, bits of Louisiana into South Texas, all the way down into Mexico, and then across all of the Caribbean, which is very cool, into South America. So basically, anywhere where you might be hit by a hurricane, there are pink flamingos, except for these little islands down here. I don't know what's happening there. They want massive groups, I'm just gonna warn you. I have 8 in here and it's not enough. They need 20 to 500, but they don't need a lot of space. So you're going to need a baseline of 300 plus 125 square meters of water, and then after that, I mean, the additions are fairly minimal. With your minimum group of 20, you're going to be looking at 471 square meters and 353 of water, so calculate for about 800 meters of land space for your habitats. They do not need deep diving space, but it does help if you have some deep water for them to swim in. They will, of course, tread as well. Here is one of our babies. So as you can see, it has not gained that pink coloration. They've got this really white fluffy down. I'm gonna try and put a picture of like a real life baby flamingo, like a fresh out of the egg baby flamingo because they are the cutest things I have ever seen. Oh my goodness, like normally baby birds are hideous. I'm sorry, they're not pretty until they get that fluff. These guys are just precious. So they will gain that pink coloration as they age up, and their diet consists of more of that brine shrimp, and it turns their plumage pink. Fun fact from me, these guys are so ubiquitous across Florida that I genuinely thought that they were our state bird. It's not, but I thought it was, which tells you how much you see these absolute cretins. So for me, very iconic animal from my childhood. Very fun to build for like a beach day kind of situation. They do want this sort of sand and dirt mixture, so you could probably create an Everglades situation by just layering plants on plants on plants on plants. Last note about the flamingos, they do not have any interspecies enrichment. Now, I did see some people complaining about the fact that they don't get any kind of enrichment with other species, but I will mention, from my time in Florida, that the majority of animals that these guys do well with in nature are not animals that we can house them with in Planet Zoo. You'll typically see them with like herons, which we don't have herons. You'll see them with turtles, which only exist as an enclosure or a exhibit species. There's no, like, there are free roaming turtles, but they don't really care about the Aldabras or Galapagos. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that some zoos have housed them together, but I've noticed that Planet Zoo really likes to keep interspecies enrichment limited to animals that they would actually cohab with. Oh, that was cute. Limited to animals that they would actually cohab with in the wild, and again, turtles, not really going to be a thing. Herons don't exist. And then lastly, American alligators, which I shouldn't have to tell you why that's a bad idea. Just because it does happen in real life, just because I have seen either that or some very excellent trickery. Especially at the Busch Gardens Zoo, I've seen them nearly or completely cohab their flamingos with the American alligators and been okay. But in Planet Zoo, the mechanics are just not there. Yeah, pink flamingos. I didn't think I would like them just because they're a flamingo, and normally flamingos are disease vectors, but I'm actually really glad that we have these in the game, and I've got some ideas for them in the future. Alright, so next, let us go... we've got two options. You know what? Let's stick with our birds. So we've got first bird over here, let's talk about our second bird. This, in what I've done my best to recreate a Zoo Tycoon 2 dinosaur habitat in, are our greater rheas. So these guys, they are radites, and at this point I think we have just about every radite in the world in this game. Like, I know we're missing one or two species. But yeah, we're basically... Like, if you want birds, we have enough birds. It's just, they're radites. They're not going to be the ones that fly around. They look pretty good, I gotta say. They've got the right amount of fluff and texturing. Of course, you know, Frontier always does really well with their birds and reptiles, and this is no exception here. They have this really kind of unique way of holding their arms. And I'm not entirely sure whether or not this is true in real life as well as in game, but I believe it is, which is really cool. And then they've got some interesting animations that I believe should go with this. They've got, like, one where they stick their arms out and kind of, like, stare intently at you. I wish I had more to say about these guys, but it's another ostrich. I don't know. They like grasslands. I mean, this habitat is actually pretty correct for what they want. So you're going to need a minimum of 3 individuals kind of regardless. For your bachelor groups, you can have 3 to 6, and then for all others, you can have 3 to 13. And then once again, if you want to have a mixed group, it is your standard 1 male to, you know, the harem of females or whatever. This is all pretty normal. They reproduce fairly easily, they're confident, and guests flee from them. Notably, all mature offspring are tolerated in the group. But you will need to keep an eye on that, of course, just to make sure you're not getting any kind of weird behaviors. They are entirely South American, so from Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, this whole region here. Fairly easy to contain, once again, grade 2, 1.25 meters. They do need a decent amount of space, so for the minimum of 3, you're going to need 850 square meters, but you don't have any extra requirements, no climbing, no swimming, no nothing. So, pretty good all around there. They have interspecies enrichment with alpacas, capybaras, and llamas. And they've got a pretty good roster of enrichment, which you are going to need. Oh, we've got some fighting. Oh, they are angry. Oh, he lost. Okay. You are 7.7. You are 2.2. Go to the trade center. Over here, we have an animal that I had never heard of until this pack. This is the white-faced saki. Specifically, this is the male white-faced saki. He's playing with his keyboard thing. They are surprisingly cute, I have to say. They are a New World monkey from Central and South America. We will check their ranges in a moment. The males and females have extreme sexual dimorphism, which we do see a decent amount of in several monkey species. But maybe not, like, some of them are to this extent, but I'll show you in a minute. So the males have these kind of, white faces. They've got these long fluffy tails. Now, I'm left to understand that they are built on the capuchin rig with the addition of more bones for the tail. So you may see some similar behaviors in that regard. Oh, they're gonna have a conversation. Okay. That's cool. Oh, they're gonna groom each other. Oh, no, and he got rejected. Oh, and now they're gonna fight. Ah, they're silly. It was a really fun interaction. I've never actually seen that one. Oh, here's a baby. We do have a baby. Come here. Look at this tiny little critter. Pretty sure that is. Yeah. Female 1.1. So this is our female baby. And you can tell. And they are cute. Very, very small. I almost didn't catch it. Here is one of our females. So like I said, pretty, at least in coloration, very extreme sexual dimorphism. This means that the males look different than the females. Their overall structure, though, is not terribly different between the males and females, which is kind of, I mean, it's not unusual, again, but it's notable, especially for monkeys of any kind. They have this very drab kind of mottled coloration that almost makes them look a little bit like the three-toed sloth, in my opinion. Not entirely sure if this is just a case of convergent coloration for the sake of their habitat, or if there's something else going on there. I'm gonna say it's probably the first option. Yeah, they're just very good. Like all other primates, they are going to require a ridiculous amount of climbing space. I have 4 in here, plus some climbable trees, and that is just barely bringing them up to the level that they need. So I would recommend that you build a jungle gym and then put the monkeys in, rather than trying to build a habitat and then throw in the monkeys and then compensate later. I have made that mistake. Prioritize the jungle gym first, because otherwise you're not going to meet your requirement. They are fairly small monkeys, so you can use most of the small and large building objects, which is quite handy. I've not done a lot to decorate this habitat, I just sort of slapped it together. Honestly, trying to build for monkeys is it's an exhausting endeavor for what is for me very little reward, so I don't put a lot of effort into it. But if you love a challenge, like a construction challenge, I would strongly recommend that you give these guys a shot, because like the other monkeys, they are going to give you a bit of trouble until you get everything ironed out, and then they're very fun. So the white-faced saki, let's look at their statistics real quick. So for one individual, you're going to need 210 square meters of land requirement, 25 square meters of climbing requirement, which is fairly standard for the monkeys. They need grade 1 climb proof at 3 meters, so you're going to need a tall barrier, but it doesn't have to be very strong. I've kind of gone overkill with this. Your group size is going to be a bare minimum of 2, which is surprisingly small for some of the monkeys. Again, they fit in this sort of odd niche. They enjoy mixed groups, so you can have 11 males, 11 females. They don't particularly care. They are monogamous with some tendencies towards promiscuity, which is actually fairly similar to human structure, so fairly easy to understand. They are considered shy, but guests can enter their habitat, which I find very interesting. So I'm not entirely sure how you're going to handle that challenge if you want guests to roam the habitat. But, you know, if you wanted to give it a shot, it looks like it's going to be a really fun challenge. Like, in general, I think if I had a little bit more patience for monkeys, these guys would be really, really fun to build for. I just have not quite gotten there yet. They eat monkey chow, leaves and shoots, fruit. They have a ton of enrichment, although most of it you will recognize from, like, you know, the capuchin and other small monkeys in the game. I believe the chimpanzee as well has fairly similar requirements. And they do not benefit from any sharing of habitat, that they like to be alone. Just kind of a running theme. The only animal so far that, in fact, I think the only animal that does benefit from sharing space with anybody is going to be our bighorn sheep. So if you're really keen on interspecies enrichment, you're going to struggle a little bit with this pack. Alright, and that is going to bring us to our last animal over here. We have some confetti and some flowers to separate. Yay, we got to the end. I've got some signs over here. We'll go over all of those in greater detail in a moment. These are our ocelots. So I know we've got a baby in here and 2 adults. Here's one of our adults. So when I first saw these guys in the promotion releases, I was not terribly convinced on them, honestly. Ocelots do have extremely short fur, I will say that. But the pictures kind of made it look like they didn't have a fur texture at all. It was just a smooth model. Seeing these in person, I can see that that is not necessarily true. You could see the belly fluff. It's just that their fur is very smooth. But you can see some of the texture detail in there as this one walks around. They do all have variations in their spots, so you shouldn't get any individuals that look quite the same, which is very cool. They've been doing that a lot for some of these spotted jungle cats. Oh, there's our baby. Let's go look at him. Much more egregious, I would say, than the... What a slow jump. Okay. Oh my goodness, you are precious. You're precious! And so small. Oh my goodness, I've just about lost him in the grass. And that bright red nose, I mean, it's perfect. And the cute little, like, ear markings, which they use for communication, by the way, which is really cool. Anyway. Yeah, the babies look fantastic. The adults, I don't know how to feel about the head geometry. It's still a little bit too big, too cutesy. That's my only complaint, is a lot of the animals in this pack just look a little bit... They've got that Planet Zoo cuteness about them, I would say, that kind of baby face. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is Planet Zoo style, and at a certain point I've just got to accept that, you know. But that being said, they're very, like, good in general. Frontier has historically struggled a little bit with their cats, but overall I would say that these guys look pretty close, you know. There's just a couple of little, I don't know, kind of things. They are quite interesting to build for, as are all cats. They are going to need some amount of climbing space, and they're going to need a lot of it. So, kind of treat these guys like you would treat one of your monkeys. They are going to need the big climbing rigs, so despite the habitat size being fairly small, they're going to need a sizable climbing facility. You can't just slap some trees in there and hope that it's going to be okay. So let's go ahead and look at their statistics real quick. As a big cat, the ocelot does not benefit from interspecies enrichment. How would that even work? They're considered of least concern, and they're actually migrating up Central America along the coastlines and into North America, which is very exciting. But that does mean when you're building your habitats, if you want to keep them accurate to their natural habitat, you gotta make sure that you are keeping an eye on the fact that you're gonna be working mostly in, like, Arizona, a little bit of California, that whole region, and then down into northern Mexico. So, you're not gonna have a lot of, like, American grassland plains. It's going to be more kind of grassland deserty, if anything. So They also really like their jungles. They're found through most of northern South America and most of southern Central America. Why did we name our continent like this? And they need a decent amount of space, but not a ridiculous amount. Like I said, a lot of climbing. So for one individual, you need 81 square meters, and for land requirement, you're going to need 532 per individual. However, you only need 1 to 2 per habitat, as is the case with all cats. They are solitary creatures. So, kind of like your monkeys, because they require a decent amount of climbing space, I would recommend that you focus on building your frame and make sure that your habitat has enough space for it. After that, though, they're fairly flexible. North and South America grassland and jungle foliage packs are fairly fleshed out, so you can get a lot of interesting designs out of them. As you can see, I have them in just one big circle. And of course, like all cats, they are escape artists. I would say, you know, adding to our list of big cats, I think that these guys are a really wonderful addition. Before we talk about my overall thoughts, let's talk about some of our buildings. So these are built on just like your plaster walls. This is a custom built window, but we can see some of the parts sort of in action. So we have these sort of cloth panel roofs. We have these rattan mats, which they're using as wall decorations, which is certainly a choice. My family is Mexican American. I'm gonna be looking at this and going, on the one hand, they did really well in capturing the concept and the theme and the style. Like, it's got that little bit of Planet Zoo flair to it, but it is clearly that bright, poppy, Mesoamerican look that I have been really wanting. We've got some really nice leaf patterns, some florals, really nice designs. But I wish that they had pushed it further. We've got these sort of, sorry, I don't remember what they're called, but these kind of paper crochet flimsy things, these lacy things. But we have them for the saki, the flamingo, the bighorn sheep, and the rhea. Now, we do not have them for several animals. Namely, we don't have them for the coyote. We don't have them for the ocelot. We don't have them for the bush dog. So that's 4 out of our 7 animals that are represented in these little patterns. But the ones that we did get, I think that they're designed quite well. They definitely fit the style and the theming of how you would make these. I have mostly seen these as table decorations. I don't think I've ever seen them as banners. So that is something where I'm like, it's a choice, but it's a really cute choice. Now, if we go ahead and pull out the construction pieces, we get a ground floor laid out, and then we can go through all the parts. Okay, so let's go through some of these parts, right? First off, we have our rattan floors. Now, for some reason, all of these are scrambled up when you first pull them out. So we've got, again, for the rhea, we've got this kind of large decorative disc. They are flexicolor, so they are going to try and adapt to whatever I pull out first, which I find very frustrating. But we will try and show all of them off without any problems. No promises. There we go. So again, we've got our bighorn sheep, our rhea, our flamingo, and our sakis. So we also have these kind of larger discs, and we have them in half discs. So we have both the small halves and the large halves. They are flexicolor on most of the channels. They do like to default to this kind of pale rattan color. So you are going to have to work around that if you want to flexicolor them, but I will say, rattan is just like that. Like, it would be nice if we didn't have that baseline color and we could do other things with it, but it's a rattan carpet. I'm sorry, it's gonna be that way. So you can do half decorations, you can do full circle decorations, you can use them as walls, you can use them as rugs. It's rattan. It's exactly what you expect it to be. These also get used very often as basket covers, so if you wanted to pull out like your... What the hell is happening there? That's interesting. Something went wrong there. Something went very wrong there. I'm not entirely sure if this is a mod or a bug. Somebody who has a clean clean Planet Zoo, no mods. Please check the East Asia baskets 1, 2, and 3 and make sure that we're not, like, that this is an issue with my client and that we're not looking at a bug, because this could be a bug. Anyway, getting back to the task at hand, what I was going to say is that you can use these as basket covers and it would be completely accurate. So, assuming, of course, that they are not using what appears to be a leaf. What is that? That is a branch texture. That's like a branch mulch texture. What is happening here? Y'all, it's day 2. Things are gonna be a little weird. So, anyway, next off, we have lots of confetti in all the varying shapes. So this is a retextured version of the leaf litter that we're used to having, but this time it's confetti. If you like to build cities and you desperately need like garbage and detritus without necessarily having guests run amok without trash cans nearby, this would be a great way to do that. If you just want actual confetti for your zoo, this is a great way to do that. They are flexi-color on all channels, so you don't have to have this garish color. You can have, you know, one particular color for all of it. I mean, that does look a little bit like blood splatter now, but I'm sure somebody will get used out of that. I've seen a lot of horror exhibits. So, lots of options there. Over to our Fiesta fabric panels. So we have a lot. We have a lot of these, which is nice. It is good to be getting more fabric in the game. They are flexi-color, so you will be able to meld them into kind of a one singular. You will get some artifacting from the original texture, and you can see where there's some interesting kind of model design in here. Like, it's not model, but it's the way that the texture is hitting the model. Anyway, yeah, so if you have been looking for flat, kind of thicker cloth pieces for like awnings, roofs, stuff to blend in, these might be what you need. And I'm certain that they can also work for like some of the corrugated plastics. This has got kind of a good texture for that as well. So we also have a, like I said, we have a ridiculous amount of them, all the way up to a 2x2 and a 2x4. So anything that you would expect a window in, you've got it. Next off, we have our metal pieces. So we've got this sort of lamp kit here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on our snapping, which these do work really nicely with the snapping. I like that a lot. So here is our metal joist. You can have 2 points apparently where they stack. Sorry, 1 point where it stacks, and you can do that kind of interesting design with it. Here is our lamp. It snaps just like that. And then here's our Fiesta framework pole. So if we snap all of this together as intended, so this is your new light post. It's not constructed entirely for you. You're going to have to make it yourself, but with snapping, it's very easy to do. And I think that they look really cute. And all 3 of these pieces, I think, have a lot of flexibility in terms of use cases, especially when we start to look at your metal fencing. So I have been needing more metal fencing for various projects that I'm also working on. So you get a small version and you get a long version. We could just strap all of these together. It is true, we could do that. I'm glad that we don't have to. And the large piece does come with some specific snap points, so that way you can create this L bar for your windows like they were showing off in the promo material. Okay, back to colors. We have a large fan, we have a small fan. There we go. I can see a lot of uses for these in more of your East Asia kind of builds as well. I'm currently working on a cyberpunk build, so I'm probably going to end up using these for some of my wall decorations. Additionally, I'm feeling particularly creative. So these I have seen frequently. Not as much anymore. They were more something I saw in Florida. But you get these cute little fluffy, like, paper mache balls, and they're just decorations. You just hang them from the ceiling or whatever. So next up, we were talking about our little Fiesta paper flags. So like I said, we only get the flamingo, the saki, the rhea, and bighorn sheep. But we also get them on these strings, and they're fairly customizable. And then, of course, we get these sort of longer strings with everybody represented, including flats and rounds, and then we also get these strings separately in all of the shapes that you would expect. Now, these are not flexicolor, as far as I know, they are not. Now, I have heard people requesting that they become flexicolor. I'm not going to hold my breath, but maybe Frontier will listen and decide to add that in, like, you know, a bug fix update. Next up, we have these flowers, which I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to like, and then I saw them, and I love them. So they, once again, are flexicolor, and they have these wonderful shapes to them. And even though I know that consciously that they're supposed to be part of, like, you know, the Mexico theme or whatever, I can see the people who like to build a lot of, like, xenoecology habitats, you know, the really alien out there kind of like aberration stuff. I can see you guys getting a lot of uses out of this. Next, we have the paper fronds. These are going to be like all of your mosaic pieces. They have a Mesoamerican style that I quite like and fits them in with this pack, but they also blend really nicely in with the South America pack, if you have that, and some of the more baseline Planet Zoo stuff. So you will have a lot of opportunities to decorate. Next up, we have your build your own piñata pieces. So we have eyes, we have this little round thing, which I think is going to be perfect for, like, if you build houses. This would make a perfect footstool, like a perfect footrest. The texture is not really paper, it's got too much of a shine and a plasticky texture to it, so I can easily see somebody recoding this as like pleather, or some kind of reused material. Like, I can absolutely see that happening. We get items for various heads, apparently, horns, legs, necks, tails, torsos, and trapezoids. We do get some examples of like a piñata put together. So here they've built an elephant. Here they've built one of our million birds. So you have a lot of flexibility with these guys. It doesn't have to just be the animals from this pack. You can build any kind of piñata you want. And again, I can see a lot of reuses for these for other things. It's mainly this texture that I find really interesting, and it's got a ton of geometry to it, which, again, I kind of wasn't expecting. Lastly, in the Fiesta decorations, we have sombreros. These are going to be great for decorating your Mexilente stands. However, again, like the rattan pieces, they have the paint on them, but otherwise it's going to be this yellow color. I can kind of see a situation in which maybe we end up using these as like fountains, like a fountain nozzle of some kind. I don't know. It's a part where, like, if you're willing to be creative with it, I can see it having uses. Otherwise, it may end up being kind of a dud that lives in your cabinet until you need it. Back over to the confetti, we have we have funfetti effects. We've got both a constant streamer and a poofer. Now let's talk about some of our more build-oriented stuff. So we have this really nice, nondescript plinth. I think that this is going to be one of the most flexible pieces, especially for, like, building and city builders. I imagine y'all are looking at this and going, I have so many ideas. This is exactly what I needed. And I say that because I'm doing that. Next, we have more custom fences. So, Planet Zoo has been really going all in on the, let's just give you all the fences you could ever possibly need so you don't need to construct your own. Sure. Alright, I mean, I appreciate it on some level, but I wish that I had, like, these pulled separately, which oddly enough we don't. We only get the thick boys, and then we have these fencing. So we're not even necessarily getting all the parts that should be available with this kit. I'm not entirely sure why. You will probably be relieved to know that this is flexicolor, so you can turn it to some more, like, sensible colors if you wanted to. I rather like this sort of dried beechwood. We also get a custom gate to go with it. And then, once again, over in the probably useful category, we have a bunch of little metal pieces. These are fairly nondescript. We have pins, we have hooks, we have these U-shapes, hinges, plates of all kinds, including the sort of zigzaggy one. So real quick, we gotta talk about the animal signs. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw some of these up on the board. There's not really a whole lot to talk about with these. They have that standard Planet Zoo watercolor style that has become the baseline in most of these packs, and quite frankly, I'm really happy to see it. I almost wish that we could go back and get some of these more standardized images for some of the older packs. But overall, I think that they're wonderful representations. I would have liked a couple more of the Coyote at some different angles. This one is a bit of a... It's a bit of an awkward shape, I have to admit, but overall I like it. Same thing for maybe the Ocelot and definitely the Sakis. I would have loved more of both of them. Maybe like one of the Ocelot leaping, and then, you know, just some more like random pictures of the Saki just doing whatever it is that they do. I think that I would have liked that. And that really is sort of my number one complaint about the build parts in this pack, is that I wish that we had more. I'm happy to have the things that we do have, but a lot of it feels specialized, and I need more, you know? I think that, like, this little corridor right here and the lamp are probably going to be our most useful pieces out of this entire pack. Everything else is very, very situational. Yeah, so there's definitely some potential to the different bits and bobs, but for the most part, I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be most of the metal pieces, and this plinth right here, maybe to a certain extent these panels, depending on what I need to do, and possibly this fencing, or at the very least these beams, these rather thick beams right here, is probably what I'm gonna get the most use out of this pack for. The rattan carpets can be really good for interior decorations, but on the other hand, you know, they're definitely sort of a niche item where you're going to need it where you really, really need it, and otherwise it's not going to be something you pull out. The confetti is welcome in the sense of causing ground clutter and stuff like that, and, you know, especially the little confetti exploders, which sadly are not flexicolor. I wish that they were, but that's okay. So there are definitely some places where I can see some of this pack being useful. A lot of it I think is going to be really niche and specific, which is a problem that I've had with a lot of the latest build packs, is that they're very specific to the thing that you're going to be doing, and if you don't need them outside that, you're probably not going to be using it. Do I wish that we had gotten more and better things? Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff that was on my wish list that we didn't end up getting. Like, for example, I really would have loved some graffiti decals. And honestly, I would have liked just more of that kind of street art style that you see all over South American cities. I do appreciate how colorful and bright they have made everything in the pack. That is certainly appropriate, considering, you know, it's the Mexico build pack. But there are still some items that I wish we had gotten more of, just in general. So overall thoughts and feelings about the America's pack. On the whole, I think it's good. We're kind of in a place right now with Planet Zoo's building materials where we have most of everything that we honestly need. It's just figuring out how to mix and match combinations in order to get the particular look that you want. So overall, I think building is in a good spot, but there are some disappointments for me in terms of what we're lacking out of the pack. As far as the animals in the pack, I think this might be one of my favorite animal packs so far, just for me personally, but I really love big cats. I really love dogs. I am fine with the rheas, they're neat. The sakis, I can definitely see some potential for, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited to have another New World monkey. And I'm more in love with the flamingos than I thought I was gonna be. So, for me, oh yeah, and the Bighorn sheep, which I have been wanting for years and years and years. So there's a lot of winners for me as far as, like, the animals in this pack. And there are some that I'm like, I can live without. Like, I can kind of live without the rhea. But, you know, I think if anything, I would have replaced it with, like, you know, some have suggested the Coyote. I would really have loved one of the other anteaters, one of the like tree anteaters. I think that would have been my favorite. But for the animals that we did get, I think that they're all excellently brought to life, and definitely things that I personally have wanted. I've heard a lot of criticism that, like, these are just reskins of other rigs that we have, and okay, alright, I hear you. But on the other hand, we've needed something that is not just the doll sheep for years. Sheep are kind of iconic to both the Americas and to Europe, and the lack of them in the game has been kind of frustrating. But yeah, something like, you know, these sheep are definitely one of the things that I've felt we've needed in the game for a very long time. Coyotes, yes, I know that we have a lot of dogs in this game. I'm aware, but the coyotes are so iconic to the Americas that it kind of feels weird to not have them. And I think that this is another point, right, is why do you play Planet Zoo? Do you play in order to build an AZA accredited zoo? In which case, I can completely understand not wanting something like the coyote, you know? But Planet Zoo is about more than just building real-life AZA accredited zoos. You know, it's a fantasy builder. So, you know, some of us take it and build real-life landscapes. You know, we don't really care about the zoo half, we care more about building, you know, the Australian outback or the Rocky Mountains. In my case, I like to take city centers and, you know, corporate business parks and rewild them. That brings me joy. I couldn't explain to you why, but it does, you know? So for me, having kind of weird out there animals that have nothing to do with what modern zoos are keeping is something that I really enjoy and I look forward to. So it just sort of, you know, depends on why you're here. In any case, I think that any addition of a new animal is a good addition of a new animal, even if it's not necessarily one that I would pick or one that I have thought about, or in the case of the saki, one I've ever even heard of. You know, it's always a joy when I get to find an animal that I don't know yet, because I've got a rather encyclopedic knowledge of animals, so it's really nice to find a new one. Overall, I would say I think that this pack was well worth the $10 I spent on it. For me personally, for my tastes and for what I want to build and for my projects, I think this was worth the $10. Am I disappointed in some of the build pieces? Yes. Will I eventually have a reason to use all or most of them? Almost certainly. Even now, thinking about my cyberpunk zoo that I'm working on in the background that may or may not ever come to the channel, no promises. You know, I see potential in this even if it's not necessarily, you know, something that you would see in like a normal San Diego rebuild, you know? Or even just like your own personal zoo that's not based off of anything but is going, you know, off of real life mechanics. I don't really build like that. I build fantasy. And for me, this captures all of the animals that I want in that fantasy, you know? So anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this review of the North America Animal Pack. I will not be doing a how did it age on this pack because I don't need to. That series is running concurrently as a retrospective, and this one is brand new, so you can hear my thoughts about it like as it launches. So I'm not going to redo that unless something like really changes or I discover more things about this pack that I didn't know before. All these things are possible. Anyway, y'all stay safe, have fun, and happy building. I will see you next time.